Te Ngākau program update. Was that someone online?
Martin Ali.
And we have Councillor McNulty online. Fabulous, thank you. This is a public briefing, correct? But towards the end, we'll need to go to public excluded.
Correct, thank you.
But
yep.
Yeah, over to you.
Kia ora koutou, thank you very much, Mayor. So, this presentation today, just moving on to the second slide actually, the purpose. So this presentation today is for 1 hour, and it's to give you a little bit more of an in-depth update on where we're at with the Tanako program of work, which includes the Town Hall project and the Tamatapihi project as well. The reason that we're doing this is because in essence this is kind of kicking off a series of updates that we'll provide to you for the duration of the Tanako program. Approximately every 4 months. And it's really an opportunity for you to get a better understanding of progress of the program and the various different projects. So we've put together the presentation today, but obviously we've done that kind of from an officer perspective. If you feel that you would like to see us change the format, present different type of information, provide more information or have less information and more time for question, answer and discussion, then please let us know, and I'll try and leave a little bit of time at the end to make sure that there's an opportunity for some feedback as well. But yeah, feel free to say to us, hey, actually, to make this better next time, can you do these kind of adjustments? And that's fine. So with me today I have Faz, who is our Tanako Program Manager, and also Paul, who is the Project Director for Tamatapihi and the Town Hall projects. Cool, so the agenda, basically we'll talk through, and as I was kind of hinting up front, I'll try and allow as much time as possible for discussion and question and answer. So I will go through some overview slides reasonably quickly, because I think you're familiar anyway with things like the Tanako Precinct framework that was done a few years ago, and you're probably familiar with our governance arrangements and our assumptions in regards to the LTP, but I'll briefly go over those again. And then we'll get into more depth around information about the actual projects themselves and an opportunity to ask questions. So, first part. So the Tanako Precinct framework, I believe the council adopted that, I think it was 2020 or 2021. 2021, and the adoption of the framework really was intended to create a strategic and integrated guide for the future development of the precinct. A number of issues were identified around Tanako. Most of these are still the case today. Closure of buildings has meant a loss of people, activity and vitality from that part of our city. The current state and the historic state of Tanako Precinct doesn't really reflect Wellington's unique culture and identity, and specifically doesn't really reflect mana whenua and te ao Māori identity. The precinct has not really been equipped to deal with future resilience challenges, and as part of our program of work we are digging deep on that one, so to speak, to make sure that we are fully appraised of all of the geotechnical and climate risks associated with the precinct. And there is a view that the precinct is not as integrated with the central city and the waterfront as it could be, and these are important spaces to make sure that we achieve that. So that framework sets out some thoughts and thinking around how we want the Tanako Precinct to be. The vision from the Tanako Precinct framework: Tanako is the beating heart of the capital city, a thriving neighbourhood where creativity, culture, democracy, discovery and arts collides on the edge of Te Whanganui Tara. That is the vision that we're working to and continue to work to around these projects. And the objectives of the vision, the resiliency, sustainability and enduring nature of the precinct, the integration with the city and the waterfront, safe and accessible, integrated with the transport network, respects and incorporates experiences of architecture, design and heritage, vibrant, welcoming, and has multiple uses alongside its civic role, expresses our culture and embeds a mana whenua values into its design. All of those things are very much part of the objectives of all of the different projects that we're doing in Tanako. What we've done over the last few months is, I guess, reinvigorate the Tanako program from a program of work perspective. We have a single person on the executive team, myself, as the senior responsible officer for all the projects associated with Tanako. And this is all to do with us driving that integration and coordination across all of these different pieces of work. We appointed Faz in April. We have a working program strategy that we derived between us over the last couple of months as well. And we put a new program board in place in November, which I'll briefly describe. And just going to touch on that program strategy, the key aspects of that, and I mean a working strategy for us to use on a day in, day out basis, is really to focus around making sure that each decision is considered from a strategic perspective across the precinct, referring back to that framework, that we have coordination between projects and we prevent silos, we manage interdependencies, we apply best practice project management, we firmly establish the role of mana whenua as a partner in the program, and we improve communication and engagement with stakeholders, including yourselves and the public. So briefly, from a physical scope perspective, in this precinct, this slide is a summary of the different physical buildings. So the two main projects that are deeply underway, Te Marapihi and Town Hall, due for completion in the 26-27 period. The piece is not yet underway, so Cab and Mob, and we emailed you yesterday about the RFP that's gone out to market for Cab Mob redevelopment. We spoke to you last week about getting the money brought forward from next year for the beginning to start the demolition, so they'll start in the new year. But there are a series of other buildings as well that are important to the overall Tanako scope. So there's the Capital E building, the old Capital E building, which is number 7 there on the map. Which is structurally integrated with the basement and the City to Sea bridge, which also provides a back wall for the creche. So there's a number of these physical elements that can't be dealt with in isolation because they have structural connections between them. All of them are being assessed in terms of their seismic capabilities, and we're also doing a number of other geotechnical and climate assessments around the square that Faz will talk to in the next section. We've also obviously got the Michael Fowler Centre as part of Tanako, and you're aware of the DSA that's been done on that, and the earthquake-prone building status of it, and the regulatory completion date is September 2029. The Jack Islet Green is part of it. We have not been really looking at or focusing on Jack Islet Green for a number of years. And then there are some ancillary projects that are associated with the precinct but are done privately, so the one on the Michael Fowler Centre car park by Willis Bond, for example. Okay. Just to finish up on my part of the overview, so we have put a Tanako program board in place, and that program board is overseeing the I guess working governance of all of the projects in the precinct, and making sure that we work within the approved funding and the requirements of the framework, etc. And I think I've mentioned all of the projects that are associated with that. So the folks on the program board, FYI, myself as the chair, as the senior responsible officer, Yeston, who's our manager of property and capital projects, Gisela Carr, who's our manager of creative capital and is accountable for the Ahatini strategy. And then we have 4 external people involved in the program board. So Peter Nevin, who has a background in executive management of Fletcher's, Dr. Ruth Harley, who has been on the board of Radio New Zealand, Robert Cameron, who is a PwC partner and has been involved in these projects, well, actually, we were starting with the town hall way back in 2019. And Carolyn Van Leuven, who you're familiar with, who's also on the board of the CHIP. They're all on the board of these projects as well. The LTP that we're working on at the moment, the assumptions that we've made in regards to budgets, etc., include the completion of the Town Hall and Tamarapihi projects, the demolition of CAB, and note that we don't have a provision for the demolition of MOB, and that will be explored through the RFP process with the market over the next few months. We have financial placeholders for the demolition of City to Sea Bridge, Capital E and the Tanako basement, but we don't have a provision for replacements. We have funding for renewal and deferred maintenance on the City Gallery, but we also have a DSA pending on that, and we do not, if that was to come back and say that, that was earthquake prone, we don't currently have a provision for strengthening work in the draft LTP at this point. We also have a line of funding in the LTP for investigative work on MFC, the Opera and the Opera House, even though obviously the Opera House is not part of Tanako, but that line of funding is kind of joined together. So just making that clear for you, that includes investigative work for MFC, Opera House and other options. Okay, I think I'll go straight over to the Tanako section now, starting with FARS. That's a fairly detailed diagram that's sitting in front of you. I hope you can read it, but we've also sent you copies of these slides as well, so you should be able to bring up a bigger picture.
Cool. Kia ora koutou, name is Fars, most of you know me. I'm not going to go into the detail of this diagram because it's kind of impossible to explain everything, but I'm going to go through the key dates that you probably need to know. The first one is around March 2024, and by that time we have all the assessments done by that date. As you can see, there's full assessments of all the structures and buildings. All the DSAs are done by that date, including the DSA on the City Art Gallery. We have Cabin Mob developer selected by that time, so all the proposal that we received by March 2024, they go through an evaluation panel, and we can come back to you with a recommendation that who is going to be the developer and what is the design. We have the development plan contract signed and awarded by that time, so we have probably a consortium of architects and landscape architects appointed to do the development plan, and also we have the cab demolition started by that time, as James mentioned. The other key date for you to consider is the July 24, and that's when the LTP is approved. We have the development plan draft presented to you by mid next year. And also we have the design of the basement, Cap E, and the bridge kind of commenced to look at all the options for construction. By February 25, we have all the designs finalized, including the development plan. Construction on most of these projects should have commenced by that time. And also, this is kind of one of the interesting points that I talked to James, that we should kind of make it clear that probably by February 25 we need to close the precinct to the public in order to ensure that these constructions can go ahead. And that's also, I mean, there is the complexities of construction project, but also the health and safety. Probably we don't want public to linger around 6-7 construction projects within a kind of quite a constrained geographical area. It will be closed.
A clarification? Yep.
Sometime before 30 June next year, you are going to be asking us for the funding of the work that's going to occur.
Absolutely.
Could you just tell me which specific steps we're going to be asked for money for?
So that's part of the LTP.
I mean, you know, this is for FY25's budget, so you know you're going to need some money to do some work next year.
Yeah.
When are we going to sign that off?
So currently, council recommended $65 million for basement, Capital E, and the bridge, and also $20 million for the investigative work. If that goes through, as part of the LTP process, that will be the budget for all these projects that we need to do.
So, but I mean, you'll presumably be coming back. Is it not 31 March? You come back to us with a whole series of specific proposals, because a lot of this is just you'll have identified, for instance, that the city gallery is okay or not okay or whatever. But I'm just trying to work out exactly what funding is going to be provided for next year.
In the LTP next year, what's
not LTP, an actual the FY25 budget.
So we are still working through what the options are for the bridge, the basement, and capital E, right? So there'll be a number of options. There'll be a demolition option, there'll be a remediation option, and there'll be potentially some kind of replacement option. We've got to do all of that work. It's unlikely that it would all be ready to be, green lighted and kicked off by the end of June next year. Right, so that's why what we've done is we've planned in this LTP, because it's really a timing question, that the least amount of funding that we should be putting in there is the potential cost for, which at the moment, quite frankly, is a ballpark for the demolition of those three things. So at some point next year, we will come back to council with a set of options for what the future of those sites could look like. But it's unlikely we'll have that in time for the completion of the LTP.
Oh, no, that's actually a good answer. Thank you. That answers my question. Just sort of a related one. I mean, I don't see the ILOT on this, but I would definitely like that to be part of the consideration, because I realise there could be benefits in terms of, whatever structure, if a structure could be built there by somebody else with their money, it might actually provide benefits, collateral benefits to us in terms of supporting our adjacent structures. But, obviously also, as we've done with Camp Mob, we have shown flexibility in terms of a willingness to sell properties if the development of that property can be done by somebody else. And, I personally would like us to be considering the sale and development of that site. So I wouldn't like it to drop out of the schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Ngākau Lot Green and a number of other spaces that they're not in this lease, they will go through that development plan, and through that process of preparing that development plan, all the options will be considered, considering that we have to maintain no net loss of greener space within the precinct. So if we can provide greener space around the precinct or within the precinct, another location, of course, Ngākau Lot Green can be considered for development, but that's part of the development plan that we will discuss with you, and there will be a lot of kind of workshops on that process. So we will come back to you around those kind of options. So going back to my point from February 25 to potentially 27, 28, the precinct needs to be closed for construction. And that's something that we are communicating with all of our stakeholders, including the gallery and the creche. Michael Feller Centre can stay open because they have an entrance from Wakefield Street and they won't be affected by the construction. The library, so basically when the library is open, we start kind of staging the opening of the precinct slowly from the library side towards the town hall. So
you can get in from
yeah, absolutely. We are hoping that most of the projects will be done by the time of opening of the library. That's the plan, optimistically. I'm going to go to the detail of some of the projects that I mentioned. So the precinct development plan, we have closed the first stage of procurement for that. We have received around 10 respondents, more than 30 consultants, a few of them from Australia, kind of partnered with local architects. We have received a really good range of people putting proposals together, and we are excited about that. We will announce the shortlisted group of those people January next year to enter to a competition, a design idea competition, and by March next year we will award the contract to the best architect that we can find with the highest quality of work, and that's the first page of the design brief that goes out for the competition. The first draft of this development plan will be presented to you by July next year, and that's one of the CEOs June next year, as that's one of CEOs' KPIs. So we are committed to make sure that we will deliver that by June next year. As James mentioned, Cabin Mob Redevelopment RFP was released yesterday to the market. We know that at least 4 local and international developers are interested in the site and actively pursuing that opportunity. The RFP process will conclude in February next year. And preferred developer, the team of consultant and contractors will be chosen by evaluation panel by March 2024. We will report back to you around that time. There are a number of risks around the program. I need to there's a distinction between the program risk and the project risk. Of course, Town Hall, Library, they have their own risks, but these are the kind of precinct-wide risks that we need to manage. The 3 key risks that we are mitigating currently is the climate change and flooding risks. So we have quite a comprehensive plan to do the analysis on climate change and flooding and come up with mitigations that will be incorporated into each project, including Town Hall and Te Matapihi. As I mentioned, there is a number of construction projects, and these construction projects come with their own complexities and clashes. There's a lot of interface between different construction projects, so we need to mitigate that. We're having a lot of planning sessions and scheduling these projects in order to make sure that these projects can go ahead without any disruption to Town Hall and Te Matapihi specifically, but also on each other. As James mentioned, there is the issue around City Art Gallery. So the only structure that we don't have a super clear kind of idea around its seismic status is the City Art Gallery. There's currently a DSA going on. The DSA will be formalized by February next year, and we will report back to you as soon as we have that peer reviewed. And the next one, again, there's some new information here. We have done DSA on entire precinct, and that's the first time that we covered all of that. We have a report that covers all of the structures within the precinct. We have received a draft DSA on the basement, and it's 20% MBS, so it's earthquake prone. We're not surprised by that, considering the rest of the precinct is earthquake prone. The City to Sea Bridge is also earthquake prone, and it's 20% MBS. City to Sea Bridge has further complexities because of its attachment to the seawall, the lagoon seawall, and strengthening of the City to Sea Bridge requires strengthening of the city, the seawall, the lagoon seawall, and that can be quite a significant cost. But as soon as we get these reports peer reviewed and finalized, we can cost the options and then come back to you and present it. As Councillor Brown kind of mentioned, that's part of that process to come back and discuss the options. I mentioned the peer reviewing. Considering these are significant structures, significant cost, we will peer review every report that we receive, so we have confidence that the outcome that we have is quite accurate. And they're done by completely different consultants. I mentioned the gallery, and we are exploring the feasibility options for all the structures within the precinct. And
cool, thanks, Faz. Might just before the next 2 sections really going a little bit deeper into Town Hall and Te Matapihi specifically, so I might just pause at that moment to see if you want to have some questions and discussion around the more broader stuff that we've talked about so far.
Yep, we've got a few questions here. Councillor Pennant.
Thanks for all your work. The City Gallery, I was there when we strengthened it. Are you saying we have to re-strengthen it, a complete redo?
We're not sure yet. That's why we're doing the DSA. So the current DSA, I believe, is above, it's 67%, the current one, but that was done how long ago was?
2000.
Yeah, 2018. So we just thought it was 2014. We thought, given the condition of the rest of the square and some of the
Integrated, so if when cab comes down, is that going to be another space? Or where is your thinking at?
So as part of the RFP process, the developers have the freedom to decide what they can propose on that side. There is a requirement to maintain and increase the green space within the framework. That's part of the RFP process. We have clear requirements in that RFP process. So we have to look at what the developers propose, and then if we are not satisfied with the amount of green space or number of trees that we're removing, and then if they're not replacing those trees, then we can push back, and that goes through that negotiation process with that developer. That's part of the criteria of evaluation of who would be the person and which design we go with.
But isn't it our job to set the overall allocation of green space? Not, I mean, yes, there might be some done with development, okay, I've got issues about that separately, but that's our job, the whole site.
Absolutely.
So is there some kind of planning?
There is. So as far says that we are following certain guidelines that come through from Tanako framework and some of the other guidelines. But ultimately, the final options would come back to council for decision making, and so plus or minus of more built, less built would be an option that we would present back to you.
Okay. And also, just last question, you talked about getting the best architect, which of course you should. I'm just wondering, is it useful to think about a team of people even, like more than one firm, so that you get the best of?
So there are 10 respondents to the development plan RFP, but there's more than 30 to 40 consultants, because each of them, like each response is around 5 kind of different firms that they kind of teamed up together, and they already have done that, yes. Because we have different requirements is around the architecture, landscape, Maori design, climate change mitigation. So there are different. There's a climate change consultant that is teamed up with an architect. And
Councillor McNulty.
Thanks, guys. Might be my own lens on it, but it feels like there's sort of an underlying impetus to go full steam ahead. Like, we need to get this precinct going and fixed and up. And I guess in my 12 months, I know we've asked for a master plan, but I don't at least feel personally that I've said, as a councillor, put a decision that I want us to focus into here, because we're talking about over $1 billion of investment. So you may be able to walk me back a bit into this, some of the previous council decisions that are getting this into this point, firstly?
So some of that if you can recall, we covered a little bit of that when we did the town hall presentation, going back to when the town hall was first declared earthquake prone and work that has been done on it, and when it was closed, etc., when the library was closed in 2019. So I guess the history of this precinct is that it's not functional in its intent at the moment, and certainly not in the intent of the Tanako Precinct, which was adopted by council in 2020. So here we are in coming towards the end of 2023. We have got, as you say, close to $500 million worth of investment going on through Town Hall and Te Manapihi, and those buildings will be completed in some stage in the next 2 or 3 years. I guess we're working to the thought process that we don't want all that money spent, those 2 buildings open, and the place remains in essence at least half a building site for the foreseeable future. So we're working on the premise that we want to try and understand clearly what the issues are and what the solutions are and what the council's and public's preferences, so that we can get on and make that happen, so that when those buildings are brought back online, that investment actually pays off for the city. So that's kind of the approach we're taking.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'd hope we'd see in those RFPs is a vision of how this works with basically what we're restoring and not much else, because obviously there's opportunity cost. The other question, our desire to come back into this precinct, has it economically been rationalised before? Like, do we know for every dollar we're going to pour into this precinct, we're going to see a return of X? Is it more of a sentimental or, emotional connection to the functions of a square? Have we really done anything objective about the value that this precinct has for the city?
So as part of the development plan is not just beautiful images, part of it is some investment logic mapping in terms of what is the rationale for type of investment that we have for the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and that would influence the design of the precinct, and that's part of the RFP process. We want some people from a construction feasibility point of view to look at it and say, this is the best way forward, this is the amount of investment, and is it, considering the climate change challenges that we have, is it the best form of investment to do? That comes part of that master planning exercise to rationalize some of the investment. It's not necessarily maybe for for each dollar that we spend, how much benefit we reap, but benefit mapping of the precinct would be one of the key factors of that master plan, and also every single project that we have within the precinct.
Just before we go back to the list, can you tell me how much time you need for the remainder of the presentation, just so I can help manage question timing?
15 minutes.
15 minutes?
10 to 15 minutes.
No, all good. Councillor Free.
Hi, I'm just wondering, and maybe it has been answered, but what's included in the precinct mapping? We've heard about green space, we've heard about addressing climate change. Are we thinking about how it connects, connectivity between whatever buildings we want to connect and the waterfront? What else is included? How wide is this?
Yeah, so I'm going to go to the one of the. So as part of the precinct, basically everything except Te Matapihi, Town Hall, and the City Art Gallery are basically, those three buildings are out of the scope because we already either investing a lot of money or they're heritage buildings. So City Art Gallery, we can't demolish that. There's a Grade 1 heritage building. The rest of the precinct is open for discussion, including the bridge, the Capital E, Jack Lock Green, Micah Feller Centre. Of course, Micah Feller Centre car park is a Villasbond project, so basically that sits outside of the scope of the precinct. We can't redesign it for them, they already designed it. And of course the basement is part of the scope of this precinct. Cabin Mob, at the same time that we're doing the development plan, Cabin Mob would have a developer, so the designer of that developer needs to work with the designers of the master plan to make sure that the master plan, the development plan kind of aligns with the design of Cabin Mob. But the rest are basically, all the options will be considered and we can present them back to as part of that development plan.
I think also, Councillor, sorry, in the Tanako framework, there is a lot of discussion in there about the flow and the location of buildings and the vibrancy that needs to be kind of architected and designed in. So that's what Faz is referring to in terms of that development plan. But obviously there are some buildings that are anchors there now, right? So the Te Matapihi, Town Hall and City Gallery are the anchors.
Can I just ask, are you absolutely confident the cab building needs to be demolished now, or would it be prudent to actually wait till we get a little bit more information about some of the design options? I know we've set aside money for it. I asked this question before, but I just want to hear it again.
Yeah, it's completely broken, so it has to be demolished.
It has to be demolished,
yeah.
Okay. And the only other thing I wanted to ask is, if the City to Sea bridge disappeared, would there be an opportunity for more green space connecting to Jack Islet Green?
That's correct, and that's kind of what I was referring to when answering Councillor Brown's question. So coming up with, so once we've got an understanding of its seismic assessment and the potential options for remediation, we are then able to look at, because I suspect, based on the ballpark information we've had, those could be quite expensive. So what we want to do is identify what are all the other options of what we could do with that bridge or that space, and then bring those options back to council for you to consider and make decisions on.
I'll take you for a walk up there. I'll show you how you can cross.
Cool. Just for those, we've still got quite a few people on the list, so can I just ask people to kind of, keep questions short and answers nice and succinct as well? That'll be fabulous. Councillor Young.
So just going back to what the board who are going to oversee the project, do you have a skills matrix for them so you know who covers off what?
Yes, we do. Yep, that's how we selected people as well, by using the skills matrix.
Are you prepared to share it with us? Like we do for CCOs?
Can I just clarify? This is not a. This is an internal management board, as part of the project management system in place, following Office of Auditor General guidelines for best practice in program and project management. So, it's not an appointment that has gone through the council, and I don't think it would be appropriate for us to discuss the private details of the individuals we've appointed to the board.
No, it's just a skills matrix. I don't need to know their, waste measurement.
We can share our skills matrix.
That's what I'm asking for.
We're not sharing information about individuals, but the skills matrix. Is that what you're asking for, Councillor Young?
Well, I was hoping it would be individualised, but I don't mind as long as we have it all covered off.
Yes, I'm sure James is happy to explain that.
So the next question is, how do you decide on best architect? Just remembering, whatever the main, what's it called, Te Papa, they were could have had Frank Gehry when we got Jasmax. Who decides on best?
We have a panel of independent and internal stakeholders that they go through a very rigorous process of evaluation, and that's been done quite commonly around the world and in New Zealand. NZIA, New Zealand Institute of Architects, have a guideline for that, and we follow that guideline.
Thank you. So one last quick question is, when we talk about green space, does that include ghastly fake grass?
No. No.
Excellent. Thank you for the short answer. That's perfect. Deputy Mayor Foon.
Quick question. Possibly every member or everyone in Wellington feels like they've got a stake in this. When do they get to be involved in the decision and decisions? And is there a way that the design competition, like how will the public be able to feed into that?
I think the comms and engagement team are in the room, and we are working closely with them around the comms and engagement, and that happens after March 2024. So when we have the architects on board, we will go through an engagement process with the public and also yourself and the key stakeholders, the types of venues, NZSO and Wellington Experience. So we will work with all the stakeholders and the public to make sure that we get the best outcome.
Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much. I have to say that I'm feeling increasingly uncomfortable with this plan. I agree that we actually need to have a complete plan of what we're actually going to go and do here.
We're just doing questions at this point.
Okay. How are you going to manage 6 to 7 construction projects going simultaneously?
So we primarily using third parties for these projects. And so we have got 2 going on at the moment, which are large and complex in nature. They are some which we'll hear soon. One of them, in particular, the Te Matapihi project, is progressing very well indeed. And so we will soon be at a point where, and in fact, that subcontractor is the subcontractor that is doing the cab demolition. So we're working closely with the subcontractors to go through the scope of works and understand what can be managed and sequenced and in what optimal fashion that enables us to balance up the risk of overcomplicating and having too much going on at the same time.
Okay. How much input will council have while this is going on? Like, will you be making a decision and then bringing it to us and saying, look, this is what we've done? Or do we actually get to follow it or get to look at the options as they come up?
That's correct. You'll see the options as they come up. So you'll see the options for the development plan. You'll see the options for the mob cab replacement options. You'll see options for what happens with the bridge, with the Capital E building, with the square itself, with the ramp, etc. All of those options will come back to council for decision making.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, it just follows on actually from council questions, because I was going to ask the same. But this is a huge engineering project, and I'm just wondering about on your board, there doesn't seem to be anybody with engineering knowledge other than, I know Fletcher's, but that's about building, construction. But just wonder if you've got a view, would you consider that?
This is a wide range of factors to consider, and clearly engineering construction is a key part of that. So Peter Niven being on the board is an important factor in that consideration. We are working with some very, very good engineering and building subcontractors. If I reflect on the challenges we faced around Town Hall, the areas of expertise that that would suggest that we have needed to improve on, and I think this is borne out in the way that the Te Matapihi project is progressing, have been more in the space of understanding how to commercially enter and contract for these kind of projects and manage
side
these
conversations
projects.
is distracting for the presentation.
And as I say, I think the Te Matapihi project bears out that the management over the last few years has taken on board those lessons and has put systems and capabilities in place, as can be seen from the progress that is being made in the way that project's been done. I think Paul would probably agree that the key to these projects is getting it right up front, and that's what happened with Te Matapihi. It didn't happen as well for Town Hall, and that is why we have some of these issues. So to your point, I'm not sure that more and more construction and engineering capability at a program board level is the most critical element. I think we've got the right balance.
Okay, I might just take that offline. And the other thing is, how will you do, what system will you follow in terms of getting independent quality assurance or quality review over the program as it proceeds? What's the plans for that?
We're working with the PMO office on an assurance plan, and as soon as we have the draft for assurance plan, that needs to go to this board, and the board approves that. But PMO is heavily involved in the assurance plan of the program itself. Also, each project has its own assurance plan that needs to be approved.
So is that likely to include some independence? Because obviously we're talking about the PMO within council, but what about from an external
PMO will
perspective?
advise us on inclusion or exclusion of external.
Okay, it would be good for you to report back to give us that level of comfort
Sure.
as well.
We also have the third-party quality surveyors and third-party project management working with us as well.
Okay, thank you.
And final questions from Councillor Randall.
Yes, I mean, thank you for this briefing, and that this information is going to come to us in February, just when everything else is coming to us. My question is, obviously the quality of the information is very important on the seismic assessments. Can you say who was doing the seismic assessments and who was going to peer review the seismic assessments?
Yeah, we can. Yep, I haven't got that in front of me, Councillor, so we can come back with that.
So Oricon, who's doing the seismic work for the library, they've done the seismic assessments of the rest of the precinct, considering that they've been heavily involved with the library projects, and we were very satisfied with their work. Tonkin and Taylor, which are basically one of the best in geotech, they're doing the geotech assessments. In terms of the peer review, there will be different peer reviews for different reports depending on the scope of the peer review, and I don't have, but it will be along the lines of Becker, Holmes, and other firms of the same caliber.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Over to you guys again.
Thank you. Paul, I suggest that we go quite quickly through Te Matapihi, because basically it's going really well, which is a great story and love to tell you all about it, but I think in the interest of time and possibly where your interests most lie, we'll quickly go through that and then a little bit on the Town Hall, and then let's see if we can leave some time for questions. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, James. Look, very quickly, rather than sort of rattling through the slides, I think the critical thing to note, sorry about that, the critical thing to note is that we are on program and we are going to deliver it within the budget constraints that we have. So the practical completion date for handover of the building is August 2025, and we will deliver that. Okay. And the opening date is obviously first quarter 2026. And yeah, so I suppose to say the thing is that the project still, as time has evolved, because of how we structured it through separable portions and through award of contract through progressive awards, we've managed to both manage the risk quotient in terms of cost and in terms of, dare I say it, over-design aspects which creep into any construction project, normally because the client wants everything and the money doesn't have everything. So we have managed that very, very hard, and I think we've achieved a very good balance in terms of both a good high-quality product by the time the city sees it in its final form, as well as a cost-effective appreciation for delivery. The other things to note, I think, are that we are 96.9% locked now in terms of the contract price. We have just on $5 million to award, which will occur sometime in February, which is the final separable portion. And as far as the overall provisional sum, we're sitting at about 4.2% at risk from provisional sums against the overall contract price. So we're in very good shape. It's probably what I'd like to say. Yeah.
So just to clarify that, so what Paul's saying is 97% of the cost of doing this project is now fixed price.
Yeah.
You compare that to Town Hall, which is a completely different situation. So we can have a lot more, I guess, comfort and confidence that we can achieve the outcome we want and the price we want for this project.
Yeah. I think it also, and it's just in retrospect, I think it also, I would encourage future projects to look very seriously at ensuring that they have a proper ECI arrangement going forward. Having the main contractor involved in the design process has been significantly valuable in terms of managing cost. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Town Hall.
No, we're not. Not yet, sorry. We were just right at the very end, we wanted to talk about one thing, that's all.
Go ahead. Okay, sorry. So Town Hall, since funding was approved in October, the critical things that we're doing, obviously James and the CE asked me if I'd step across to work on both projects, which I've offered to do. RCP have been brought in as the project management team, and I'm very pleased about that. They're very competent project managers with an international reputation in Australasia. We are looking at issues around accelerated demolition of CAB to keep Town Hall on a critical path. So CAB does become an issue for us in terms of what needs to happen. But we are confident that we can deliver a Town Hall with certain constraints, even if we have to open Town Hall in advance of a new building we can put on that site, or indeed strengthen, depending on what the options are that are finally agreed to. The critical things are we're looking at major purchasing cost, time savings. We're looking at organ installation into the main contract. We're looking at bulk settling of past contract instructions. We're in the process now of negotiating with Naylor Love what that looks like. And there are in excess of 700 contract instructions that we are looking at, some of which we will not reach agreement with. And it will be dependent on what the deltas look like and what the risk profile looks like in terms of those contract instructions. Recent progress is that the basement pour is well underway, and we expect the basement pour to be complete by Christmas. We are still working with waterproofing issues in terms of draining water off, but overall we're pretty confident that is about 2 weeks ahead of program, which is good. We're in the process of closing out the heritage scope and getting that priced. There's still a bit of work to do there, to be honest. But in essence, the key issue is what we can reuse and what we may have to possibly replace in critical areas, and also being pragmatic about it, that if it's hidden away in the corner recesses of, dare I say it, close to the top of the ceiling, if you can't see it, do you really need it? So there will be some hard-nosed questions around heritage in the medium term, and the heritage architect is open to that discussion. Current project status is green because clearly we've been fully funded. We're looking at a program of work where I want to test all of the design implications of this project to ensure that design is closed out in a timely fashion, because currently there are things at risk because of design. And it's either redesign work that has emerged because the design itself is somewhat old, or the fact that when we possibly entered into the contract, there was a debate between the design construction companies and the main contractor as to what the best way forward was. And I don't think that was resolved in an effective manner. So because of that, we have had some rollover issues related to design, and that's why I'm testing the design now, and I'm looking at what that means for the critical path for construction. All of that was actually taken into account when we asked for the funding in the first place. So I would suggest do not get concerned about that. We believe you've funded us adequately, and hopefully if we get it right, we might be able to give you some money back. So, yeah. Yeah, we'll bank it. I think the key things is that RCP has undertaken a number of review recommendations, and we're in the process of trying to action those, and they're detailed in one of the slides. The key for getting this project really humming is for design to be pretty much passive. In other words, I don't want further redesign work occurring into midway through next year, and I need the main contractor confident that they can actually tender the work and actually open up multiple work faces, which is the critical thing about Town Hall right now. Okay. And I suppose that's probably the key issue that we're dealing with now. We're actually trying to look at the longer term program to ensure that we've got it right, but we're also triaging matters right now. So we can't afford just to stop and spend 3 months looking at our navel, and we've actually got to keep things moving. We've got to feed this thing called a main contractor, because they bill us for the pleasure of sitting there and doing nothing. So that's the critical issue we find ourselves in. In terms of budget, as I said, you've funded us, and thank you for that. The issue is we are going to try and deliver it for less than what you funded us, and hopefully we can do that. But there is a quantum of risk on this job that you all need to be aware of, and I think we've made it abundantly clear to you. Okay.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah. So if we could turn the live feed off, thank you.